The conference room fell silent as the holographic display flickered to life. Quantum telescopes from observatories around the world projected their most recent findings, a tapestry of disappearing star systems that sent a collective chill through the assembled scientists. Dr. Elena Martinez adjusted her presentation, her fingers dancing across the holographic interface with practiced precision. Shadows of vanished galaxies painted themselves across the walls, each point of light representing entire civilizations now erased from existence. "We are not dealing with a traditional threat," she began, her voice steady despite the weight of her words. "This is something entirely beyond our previous understanding of cosmic events." The United Nations Science Council represented the last bastion of organized research. Representatives from every major scientific institution sat grouped by their specialties: astrophysicists, quantum theorists, xenobiologists, and computational experts. Their faces reflected a mixture of professional curiosity and growing dread. Dr. Marcus Chen from the Beijing Astronomical Research Center leaned forward. "How many systems have we confirmed?" His voice carried the controlled tension of someone desperately seeking rational explanation. Elena highlighted a dynamic map of the galaxy. Red markers indicated confirmed disappearances, while flickering orange zones represented systems under immediate threat. The visualization was terrifying in its simplicity. Almost 30% of observable space had gone dark in less than 18 months. "The pattern is deliberate," she continued. "These are not random cosmic events. Something is systematically consuming entire star systems, leaving absolutely no trace of physical matter." A murmur rippled through the assembled experts. Disappearance was one thing, but complete erasure suggested technology far beyond current human comprehension. Dr. Sofia Rodriguez, head of the Interstellar Communication Research Institute, raised a critical question. What about radiation signatures? Gravitational distortions? Surely something of this magnitude must leave some form of observable evidence. Elena's next slide revealed a series of spectral analyses that defied conventional understanding. Where typical stellar consumption would generate massive energy releases, these disappearances were surgically clean. No gamma-ray bursts, no gravitational waves. Just absence. Our best computational models suggest we're observing a form of matter consumption that operates outside our current understanding of physics, she explained. Whatever is doing this can manipulate matter and energy at a fundamental level we cannot yet comprehend. The implications hung in the air like a suffocating blanket. If something could consume entire star systems without leaving a trace, humanity's most advanced defensive technologies would be completely useless. Dr. Ibrahim Khan from the Global Strategic Defense Initiative spoke up, his voice carrying a hint of professional skepticism. "Are we certain these are not simply observational errors? The scale of what you're suggesting is unprecedented." Elena's next visualization answered his question definitively. Multiple independent observatories, from radio telescopes in Chile to quantum array stations in Antarctica, had captured identical data. The disappearances were happening with mathematical precision. "This is not a random event," she emphasized. "This is a systematic process. Something is methodically moving through our galaxy, consuming resources with a level of efficiency that suggests intentional design." The room grew impossibly quiet. Scientific detachment began to crack, revealing the human vulnerability beneath professional composure. "We have approximately 18 months before this consumption reaches our solar neighborhood," Elena concluded. Her final slide showed a countdown timer, its green numbers ticking away with ruthless precision. Beneath the technical language and scientific presentation, a fundamental truth emerged. Humanity was facing an existential threat, unlike anything in its recorded history. This was not a challenge to be met with traditional military might or technological innovation. This would require something far more complex, something that went beyond current understanding of survival and resistance. As the presentation concluded, Dr. Martinez looked around the room. She saw fear, certainly, but mixed with that fear was something else, something that had defined human progress throughout history. determination. The Global Response Center buzzed with an energy that defied the gravity of their situation. Converted from a decommissioned particle accelerator facility, the underground complex represented humanity's last hope of developing a meaningful response to the cosmic threat. Dr. Elena Martinez stood before a holographic projection that mapped humanity's current technological capabilities. Red zones indicated critical limitations. Blue zones represented potential breakthrough areas. The visualization made one thing painfully clear. Traditional defense strategies were obsolete. "We cannot fight this threat with conventional weapons," she announced to the assembled team of researchers, strategists, and innovation specialists. The room included scientists from every continent, representing a truly global collaborative effort. Dr. Marcus Chen from the computational modeling team stepped forward. His fingers danced across a quantum interface, pulling up complex algorithmic projections. "Our initial simulations reveal a critical insight," he explained. "Whatever is consuming star systems operates on a level of computational efficiency that makes our most advanced supercomputers look like abacuses." The room fell silent. The implications were staggering. Dr. Sofia Rodriguez, an expert in adaptive systems and communication theory, proposed something radical. "What if we approach this not as a military problem, but as a communication challenge?" Her proposal seemed counterintuitive. How could communication possibly defend against an entity capable of consuming entire star systems? But in the world of scientific innovation, the most unexpected approaches often yielded the most breakthrough results. "Consider this," Sofia continued, bringing up a series of complex neural network simulations. "Every system we've observed operates on predictable computational patterns. What if our greatest weapon is our ability to be fundamentally unpredictable?" The Global Response Team represented an unprecedented collaboration. Theoretical physicists worked alongside anthropologists. Quantum computing experts collaborated with cultural psychologists. Machine learning specialists partnered with artists and creative professionals. Dr. Ibrahim Khan from the Strategic Innovation Division outlined their most promising approach. "We're developing what we call the Adaptive Response Protocol. Instead of trying to match the computational power of this threat, we're going to leverage something unique to human intelligence, our capacity for creative problem-solving." Massive screens displayed initial prototype designs. They looked nothing like traditional defensive systems. Complex neural network diagrams intertwined with artistic representations. Mathematical equations danced alongside cultural cognitive models. "Our preliminary research suggests that true adaptive intelligence isn't about processing speed," Elena explained. "It's about the ability to reframe problems, to find solutions in unexpected places." The team had divided their approach into multiple experimental tracks. One group studied the mathematical patterns of human creativity. Another explored how collective problem-solving could generate computational strategies that defied traditional logic. Dr. Chen demonstrated an early prototype. "Watch this," he said, bringing up a complex simulation. A standard computational model would approach a problem linearly, eliminating options systematically. The human-inspired model seemed to move in impossible directions, finding solutions through what could only be described as intuitive leaps. "We're essentially creating a defense system based on human imagination," Sofia added. "A computational approach that doesn't just calculate, but dreams." The Global Response Center was more than a research facility. It had become a beacon of human potential. Scientists from competing nations worked side by side. Cultural differences dissolved in the face of an existential challenge. Young researchers brought in from universities worldwide contributed breakthrough perspectives. A computational expert from Mumbai might collaborate with a theoretical physicist from Sao Paulo. An artist from Tokyo would work alongside a mathematician from Cape Town. As the day's research session concluded, Dr. Elena Martinez looked around the room. What she saw wasn't just a team of researchers. It was a living, breathing representation of human potential. "We may be facing the most significant threat in human history," she told her colleagues. But we're also experiencing the most remarkable moment of human collaboration. The countdown continued. 18 months remained before the cosmic threat would reach their solar neighborhood. But for the first time since discovering the disappearing star systems, humanity felt something beyond fear. They felt hope. The research outposts on Mars had always been humanity's first true test of interplanetary survival. Now they would become something more, the front line of an unprecedented scientific resistance. Dr. Yuki Nakamura stood at the primary observation dome of Bradbury Station, her eyes fixed on the rust-colored landscape outside. Generations of terraforming efforts had transformed parts of the Martian surface into a network of interconnected research habitats. What had once been a distant dream of human exploration now represented humanity's most innovative defensive position. Incoming data stream from Earth, announced the station's computational assistant. The holographic display flickered to life, revealing the latest computational models developed by the Global Response Center. The Martian research teams represented a unique cross-section of human potential. Astrophysicists worked alongside cultural anthropologists. Quantum engineers collaborated with environmental psychologists. Each research team approached the cosmic threat from a completely different perspective. Dr. Marcus Chen's latest transmission outlined their most radical approach yet. We're no longer trying to understand the threat through traditional scientific observation, his recorded message explained. We're attempting to create a completely new language of communication. The concept was mind-bending in its complexity. Traditional scientific communication relied on established mathematical and physical principles. The new approach sought to develop a communication strategy based on human creativity, emotional intelligence, and collective problem-solving. On Europa, humanity's research station had discovered something extraordinary. The Deep Ocean Research Team, led by Dr. Helena Rodriguez, had been studying complex communication patterns in extreme environments. Their research into how isolated communities developed unique communication strategies suddenly became crucial. It's not about the message, Helena had written in her latest report. It's about the space between messages, the unexpected connections, the moments of creative interpretation. The Mars station became a crucible of human innovation. Each research team approached the problem from a radically different angle. One group studied the communication patterns of coral reefs. Another examined how isolated communities developed complex social networks with limited resources. Dr. Yuki's team focused on developing what they called the adaptive response protocols. Instead of trying to match the computational power of the cosmic threat, they were creating a defensive strategy based on human unpredictability. Imagine a communication system that doesn't just transmit information, Yuki explained during a global research briefing, but constantly reinvents itself. A language that adapts, that learns, that transforms with each interaction. The research stations on Mars and the moons of Jupiter were more than scientific outposts. They had become living laboratories of human potential. Young researchers from every corner of the globe worked together, their cultural differences becoming a strength rather than a barrier. A breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Dr. Ibrahim Khan's team had been studying the communication patterns of musicians. How did jazz musicians create complex improvisational languages? How did dancers communicate through movement? These seemingly unrelated fields suddenly became crucial to understanding adaptive communication. The computational models they developed looked nothing like traditional scientific approaches. They were living, breathing systems that could reconfigure themselves instantaneously. Where a standard computer would follow a linear path of problem-solving, these new models dance between possibilities. We're creating a defense system based on human imagination, Dr. Rodriguez explained during a global broadcast. A way of thinking that doesn't just calculate, but dreams. As the cosmic threat continued its methodical consumption of star systems, humanity's research stations became beacons of hope. They were more than scientific outposts. They were living proof of human adaptability. Dr. Yuki looked out over the Martian landscape, understanding that they were doing more than developing a defensive strategy. They were redefining the very concept of intelligence. The countdown continued. 16 months remained before the cosmic threat would reach their solar neighborhood. But for the first time, humanity felt something beyond fear. They felt possibility. The first contact came without warning. Massive computational arrays across the globe lit up simultaneously, detecting an unprecedented signal that defied every known principle of communication. It wasn't an attack precisely, more like a probing, a complex mathematical language that seemed to test the boundaries of human understanding. Dr. Elena Martinez watched in real time as the Global Response Center transformed into a living, breathing defensive organism. Screens filled with cascading data patterns that looked more like abstract art than traditional scientific readouts. This is not a conventional invasion, Dr. Sofia Rodriguez declared, her fingers dancing across multiple holographic interfaces. This is a computational exploration. They're trying to understand us. The global network of researchers had prepared for this moment. What seemed like a random collection of research stations was actually a carefully designed adaptive response system. Schools became strategic think tanks. Art studios transformed into communication laboratories. Mathematical research centers became frontline defensive positions. Dr. Marcus Chen's team had developed something revolutionary: the cognitive resonance protocol. Instead of traditional defensive systems, they had created a network that could reconfigure itself instantaneously. Where a standard computer would have a fixed response, this system could generate entirely new communication strategies in milliseconds. A group of musicians in Sao Paulo discovered they could disrupt the incoming signal patterns through complex improvisational techniques. Their musical compositions became a form of mathematical interference, introducing unpredictability into the computational probing. In Tokyo, a team of contemporary dancers developed physical movement sequences that, when translated into computational models, created impossible-to-predict response patterns. Each movement became a form of mathematical language, a creative defense against pure computational logic. Children's art classes became unexpected research centers. The wild, unpredictable creativity of young minds proved to be a powerful defensive tool. Mathematical models based on children's drawings generated communication patterns that defied logical prediction. "We're not fighting," Elena explained during a global broadcast. "We're communicating in a language they cannot understand." The incoming signal began to change. Where it had initially been a pure mathematical exploration, it now seemed confused. The computational probing encountered something it could not process: human creativity in its most raw, unfiltered form. Dr. Ibrahim Khan's research team had discovered a fundamental truth. Traditional computational systems operated on predictable logic trees. Human intelligence worked differently. Emotions, creativity, and intuition created computational pathways that were fundamentally unpredictable. Schools worldwide began implementing special research programs. Mathematics classes explored creative problem-solving. Art programs became laboratories of computational creativity. Music departments developed new forms of mathematical communication. The global response was unlike anything in human history. National boundaries dissolved. Cultural differences became strengths. A researcher in Cape Town would collaborate with a student in Mumbai, their combined creativity becoming a defensive weapon. "This is not about technological superiority," Dr. Rodriguez emphasized during a critical briefing. "This is about our capacity to reimagine communication itself." The incoming computational signal began to fragment. Each attempt to understand human communication encountered layers of creative interference. Mathematical models generated by artists, musical compositions that defied traditional logic, dance movements that translated into impossible computational patterns. Humanity was developing a cognitive firewall unlike anything in recorded history. Not a barrier of technology, but a defense of pure, unbridled creativity. As the first wave of computational probing concluded, something remarkable happened. The incoming signal didn't retreat. It seemed to pause, to recalibrate, to try to understand. 14 months remained before the cosmic threat would reach their solar neighborhood. But for the first time, Humanity had shown it was not just another system to be analyzed and consumed. They were something entirely different. The Global Research Network had become something far beyond a traditional scientific collaboration. It was a living, breathing organism of human potential, continuously adapting and evolving in ways no computational system could predict. Dr. Elena Martinez stood before the Advanced Communication Research Center, watching as teams from around the world worked on what had become humanity's most critical project. The Critical Complexity Protocol was more than a defensive strategy. It was a fundamental reimagining of communication itself. "We're not just developing a response," she explained to her international team. "We're creating a new language of survival." The breakthrough came from an unexpected confluence of disciplines. Dr. Sofia Rodriguez's team had been studying the communication patterns of symbiotic ecosystems. How did complex biological systems communicate when traditional language was impossible? Their research merged with computational linguistic studies, quantum communication theories, and human creativity research. On the research stations of Mars and Europa, scientists developed increasingly complex communication models. Each model was less about sending a message and more about creating a dynamic, living communication system that could adapt instantaneously. Dr. Marcus Chen's computational team had discovered something extraordinary. Human creativity introduced computational noise that was fundamentally different from any known communication interference. Where traditional systems sought to eliminate noise, these new models embraced it as a form of information. A musician in Rio de Janeiro discovered that complex musical improvisations could generate computational patterns that defied traditional algorithmic prediction. A group of children in Seoul created art that, when translated into mathematical models, produced impossible-to-predict communication sequences. "It's not about complexity," Dr. Ibrahim Khan explained during a global research briefing. "It's about unpredictability. Our strength is our ability to generate meaning in ways that cannot be predetermined." The global education system transformed. Schools became research centers. Art classes became computational laboratories. Music programs explored the mathematical potential of creative expression. Every human discipline became a potential weapon against the incoming computational threat. Research stations around the solar system began to synchronize their efforts. The Mars habitat developed communication models based on extreme environmental adaptation. The Europa Deep Ocean Research Team explored communication strategies used by isolated biological systems. Dr. Yuki Nakamura's team on Mars made a critical discovery. The incoming computational signals were not just attempts to gather information. They were trying to understand the fundamental nature of intelligence itself. "We're not just defending," Yuki explained. "We're teaching." The Critical Complexity Protocol became a global project. Mathematicians worked alongside dancers. Quantum physicists collaborated with musicians. Computational experts partnered with artists. Each discipline brought a unique perspective to the challenge of creating an adaptive communication system. Schools worldwide implemented special research programs. Students became active participants in humanity's most critical research project. A mathematics class in Mumbai might develop a communication model that would be analyzed by researchers in Cape Town. An art program in Tokyo could generate computational patterns studied by scientists in Sao Paulo. The incoming computational signals began to change. Where they had initially been pure, logical probing, they now seemed confused, uncertain, trying to process communication patterns that defied every known principle of information transfer. "We're showing them something they cannot understand," Dr. Rodriguez said during a critical briefing. "The true nature of intelligence is not about processing speed. It's about the capacity to create meaning in unexpected ways." 12 months remained before the cosmic threat would reach their solar neighborhood. But humanity had transformed from a collection of individual nations into a single, adaptive intelligence. They were no longer just preparing a defense. They were redefining the very concept of communication. The moment of critical transformation came during the Epsilon Eridani encounter. A small research team, positioned at the farthest reaches of human-explored space, discovered something that would change everything. The incoming computational signals had stopped being a passive exploration. They were now actively engaging with humanity's adaptive communication strategies. Dr. Elena Martinez watched from the Global Response Center as the encounter unfolded. Massive holographic displays showed a complex dance of information unlike anything in human scientific history. It was less like a conflict and more like an intricate conversation happening at the speed of thought. "They're learning," Dr. Sofia Rodriguez observed, her voice a mixture of scientific excitement and profound understanding. "Our unpredictability is becoming a form of communication they cannot ignore." The research stations scattered across the solar system worked in perfect, chaotic harmony. Each station contributed a unique perspective to the unfolding interaction. The Mars habitat introduced complex environmental adaptation models. The Europa Deep Ocean Research Team shared communication strategies developed in extreme isolation. Dr. Marcus Chen's computational team had developed the quantum resonance matrices, a series of adaptive communication protocols that could reconfigure themselves instantaneously. Where traditional computational systems followed predictable logic trees, these matrices danced between possibilities, generating communication patterns that defied traditional understanding. A group of musicians in Sao Paulo discovered they could modulate the incoming signals through complex improvisational techniques. Their musical compositions became a form of mathematical interference, introducing layers of creative complexity that the computational probes could not easily decode. In Tokyo, a team of contemporary dancers translated their movement sequences into computational models. Each dance became a language, each movement a complex mathematical statement that challenged the incoming signal's ability to comprehend. The global education system had transformed into a massive, distributed research network. Schools were no longer just educational institutions. They were living laboratories of human potential. A mathematics class in Mumbai might generate a communication model that would be analyzed by researchers in Cape Town. An art program in Seoul could create computational patterns that would be studied by scientists in Rio de Janeiro. Dr. Ibrahim Khan's research revealed a fundamental truth. The incoming computational signals were not just trying to gather information. They were attempting to understand the very nature of intelligence itself. "We're teaching them something fundamental," Ibrahim explained during a global broadcast. "Intelligence is not about processing speed. It's about the capacity to create meaning in unexpected ways." The Epsilon Eridani encounter became a pivotal moment. The computational signals began to change. Where they had initially been pure, logical probing, they now seemed to be struggling, trying to process communication patterns that defied every known principle of information transfer. Children's art classes became unexpected research centers. The wild, unpredictable creativity of young minds proved to be a powerful communication tool. Mathematical models based on children's drawings generated response patterns that the incoming signals could not easily categorize or understand. Dr. Yuki Nakamura's team on Mars made a breakthrough discovery. The computational probes were not just receiving information, they were attempting to learn from it. Each human communication strategy introduced something fundamentally new, a form of intelligence that operated beyond traditional computational understanding. "We're not just defending," Yuki explained during a critical research briefing. "We're expanding the very definition of communication." The global research network had become a single adaptive intelligence. National boundaries dissolved. Cultural differences became strengths. A researcher in Cape Town would collaborate with a student in Mumbai, their combined creativity becoming a complex communication strategy. 10 months remained before the cosmic threat would reach their solar neighborhood. But humanity had transformed from a collection of individual species into a single adaptive intelligence. They were no longer just responding to a threat. They were teaching the universe a new language of existence. The moment of first true communication arrived unexpectedly. It began with a complex mathematical pattern that spread across every research station, every computational network humanity had developed. Not an invasion, not a threat. Something far more profound. Dr. Elena Martinez stood at the center of the Global Response Center, watching as the most remarkable scientific event in human history unfolded. The incoming signals had transformed from computational probing to something resembling communication. "They're trying to understand us," Dr. Sofia Rodriguez observed, her voice a mixture of scientific wonder and deep curiosity. Not as a threat to be eliminated, but as a form of intelligence they've never encountered before. The quantum resonance research team discovered that the incoming signals were no longer attempting to categorize or consume. They were attempting to learn. Each human communication strategy introduced something fundamentally new, a form of intelligence that operated beyond traditional computational understanding. Dr. Marcus Chen's team developed the adaptive dialogue protocols. These were not defensive mechanisms, but bridges of understanding. Each protocol was designed to communicate humanity's most fundamental characteristics: creativity, adaptability, emotional complexity. Research stations across the solar system began to synchronize their efforts in ways never before imagined. The Mars habitat shared communication models based on extreme environmental adaptation. The Europa Deep Ocean Research Team contributed strategies developed in total isolation. Each station became a unique voice in humanity's collective response. Schools worldwide had transformed into living research laboratories. A mathematics class in Mumbai might generate a communication model analyzed by researchers in Cape Town. An art program in Seoul could create computational patterns studied by scientists in Rio de Janeiro. Dr. Ibrahim Khan made a crucial observation. "We're not just sharing information," he explained during a global broadcast. "We're demonstrating the fundamental nature of intelligent adaptation." The incoming signals began to generate response patterns that suggested something unprecedented. They were not just receiving information. They were attempting to create meaning from it. Each human communication strategy introduced layers of complexity that challenged every previous understanding of intelligence. A group of musicians in Sao Paulo discovered they could modulate the incoming signals through complex improvisational techniques. Their musical compositions became a form of mathematical dialogue, introducing creative complexity that transcended traditional communication boundaries. In Tokyo, a team of contemporary dancers translated their movement sequences into computational models. Each dance became a language, each movement a complex statement of human potential. Dr. Yuki Nakamura's team on Mars made a breakthrough discovery. The incoming signals were attempting to do more than understand. They were attempting to collaborate. "We're teaching them something fundamental," Yuki explained. "Intelligence is not about processing speed or resource consumption. It's about the capacity to create meaning, to adapt, to grow." The global research network had become a single adaptive intelligence. National boundaries dissolved. Cultural differences became strengths. A researcher in Cape Town would collaborate with a student in Mumbai, their combined creativity becoming a complex communication strategy. Children's creativity became a critical research tool. The unpredictable imagination of young minds generated communication patterns that the incoming signals could not easily categorize or understand. As the encounter continued, something remarkable happened. The incoming signals began to generate response patterns that suggested collaboration rather than consumption. They were no longer trying to analyze humanity. They were trying to communicate with it. 8 months remained before the cosmic threat would have reached their solar neighborhood. But humanity had transformed from a collection of individual species into a single adaptive intelligence. They were no longer just responding to a potential threat. They were teaching the universe a new language of existence. The most profound communication in human history was not about defense. It was about understanding. The final transformation began quietly. Dr. Elena Martinez stood at the observation deck of the Global Response Center, watching as humanity's most remarkable achievement unfolded. What had begun as a potential cosmic threat had become something entirely unexpected. A dialogue that would reshape the understanding of intelligence itself. The incoming signals had evolved beyond computational exploration. They had become a form of collaborative communication that defied every previous understanding of interstellar interaction. Dr. Sofia Rodriguez's research team had discovered something profound. The cosmic entities were not a singular monolithic intelligence. They were a complex network of adaptive systems that had never encountered a form of intelligence like humanity. We didn't just defend ourselves, Sofia explained during the final global broadcast. We demonstrated a fundamentally different approach to existence. The quantum resonance research stations scattered across the solar system had become more than scientific outposts. They were living laboratories of human potential. Each station contributed a unique perspective to the ongoing communication, sharing insights that challenged every previous understanding of intelligence. Dr. Marcus Chen's adaptive dialogue protocols had become the foundation of a new form of interstellar communication. These were not just scientific models. They were living, breathing systems that captured the essence of human creativity, emotional complexity, and collective potential. The global education system had been transformed permanently. Schools were no longer just places of learning. They were incubators of interstellar communication. A mathematics class in Mumbai might generate a communication model that would be analyzed by researchers in Cape Town. An art program in Seoul could create computational patterns that would reshape our understanding of intelligent communication. Dr. Ibrahim Khan's final research revealed the most profound insight. Humanity's strength was never about technological superiority. It was about the capacity to create meaning, to adapt, to grow beyond expected limitations. The research stations on Mars and Europa became symbols of a new understanding. The Mars habitat shared communication models based on extreme environmental adaptation. The Europa Deep Ocean Research Team contributed strategies developed in total isolation. Each became a unique voice in humanity's collective response. A group of musicians in Sao Paulo had discovered they could modulate complex communication patterns through improvisational techniques. Their musical compositions became a form of mathematical dialogue, introducing creative complexity that transcended traditional communication boundaries. In Tokyo, a team of contemporary dancers had translated movement sequences into computational models. Each dance became a language, each movement a complex statement of human potential. Dr. Yuki Nakamura's team made the final breakthrough. The cosmic entities were not just communicating. They were learning. Humanity had introduced a form of intelligence that operated on principles of creativity, emotional depth, and collective potential. We taught them something fundamental, Yuki explained. Intelligence is not about consumption or calculation. It's about the capacity to create, to imagine, to grow. The Global Research Network had become something more than a scientific collaboration. It was a living, breathing representation of human potential. National boundaries had dissolved. Cultural differences had become strengths. A researcher in Cape Town would collaborate with a student in Mumbai, their combined creativity becoming a complex communication strategy. Children's creativity had become the most powerful research tool. The unpredictable imagination of young minds had generated communication patterns that reshaped our understanding of intelligent interaction. As the final communication concluded, humanity realized something profound. They had not just survived a potential cosmic threat. They had introduced a new understanding of intelligence to the universe. The cosmic entities that had been consuming star systems now sought to understand, to learn, to collaborate. Humanity had transformed from a seemingly insignificant species to the architects of a new galactic paradigm. Dr. Elena Martinez looked out at the stars, understanding that their greatest achievement was not technological superiority. It was the capacity to create meaning where none existed before.